I'm an old guy. My mom, when I was growing up, if she wanted to go to the store, she would drop me off at the playground by myself and say, okay, I'm going to the store. Stay here, have fun, whatever. When the street lights come on, you come home, was the rule. Okay. We would never do that. That's the physical world. You got to be kidding me. Do that now? New York Central Park, you're going to drop some kid off? No. No way. Isn't going to happen. That's scary. That's the scary world. Guess what? The cyber world is worse.
Much worse.
When you pass them that iPad and drop them off at the playground, they're in the cyber world now. And it can be way worse. There are no geopolitical borders really in the cyber world. It's all over the place. Okay?
One of the biggest dangers that our kids are facing today is not being abducted on the street, but actually in the online world. I don't know about you, but my kids love playing online games. I'm sure your kids too. There is exposure on social media. The online world is actually a very dangerous place. That is why I reached out to Tom Arnold. Tom Arnold is a cybersecurity expert and has been working in the field for over 30 years. He's the author of the book, The Digital Detective, which is a book about a kid that is a detective and he solves cybersecurity cases. And those cases are cases that actually happen. So I thought that was very interesting and a really great way to teach our kids about the issues and the dangers of the online world. In this episode, we talk about what are the dangers in the online world and how, as parents, we can help protect our kids from those dangers. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure you will too. Now, let's dive into the conversation. Welcome back to the Parenting Wisdom Podcast. Today, I have Tom Arnold with us, who is a cybersecurity expert, and we're going to talk about how to keep our kids safe online. So, why don't you start, Tom, by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about who you are?
So you're correct. I'm Tom Arnold, and I'm a professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, uh, here in the graduate cybersecurity program. And I have actually worked as a practitioner in the field for almost 30 years. And most of my time was leading digital forensic investigation teams. So after people got in trouble online, it was our team's job to figure out what happened, why did it happen, and potentially how could it be prevented. And the cases covered everything from large corporate breaches that you read about in the news, all the way through individuals and crimes against individuals online. So that's a bit about me.
You wrote a book which is called The Digital Detective, and you wrote that because of something very personal that happened to you. Can you share a little bit about that?
Correct. This would be probably about a little over a year and a half ago. And at that time, my 7-year-old grandson was playing a very popular online game on his iPad. And basically, an event occurred. And I'll talk about that event in 1 second. Let me give you a little bit more background in the sense that both of the parents are very, very good with cybersecurity. The dad is actually a director of cybersecurity with a large Washington corporation, and the mom is well educated in cybersecurity. So in the game that the my grandson was playing, all the parental controls were active, everything. And he would come to the parents and say, "Hey, I'm going to play the game, blah, blah, blah. No problem, go play your game." And so he was playing the game. So everybody knew that everything was happening. During the gameplay itself, an avatar controlled by someone else approached my son or grandson in the game and held up a sign and said, "What's your name and where do you live?" is what the sign said. Now, that violates all the parental controls. And my grandson saw that and was taken back by that and immediately went to his mom and showed the mom, "Hey, this is happening. What do I do?" Sort of thing, and got help. which is exactly what you want the kids to do with the parents. And I'll talk a little more about that later. But that was one key event. The second key event that took place that caused me to look at writing these books is basically I was at a social setting with a neighbor who's a parent who has two boys and a girl. And she made a comment to me that it was easier for her to talk to her kids about sex than it was about cybersecurity. And I was, that really struck me. Both of those events absolutely struck me. So my intent in trying to put together the digital detective stories was not to just have a real fun adventure that, a 14-year-old hero goes through, but to really expose people, these are all real cases that are basically there. They've been fictionalized by putting them together, and the characters themselves are very fictionalized, if you would. Um, but the events of the actual cases and how they're solved, the tools that are actually used, how the digital detective does his job throughout the book is all real. You can actually put the code into a computer and it'll work, is the point that I'm making on that. And so it's really to try to stress and let kids try to learn on their own. Because when you're trying to lecture them on cybersecurity, or, hey, you got to have a big password, you can't tell people information about yourself. Yes, those are all true things, but a lot of times you're just shouting at a wall
Yeah.
at that point. You really are. But if the kid can kind of learn on their own, and that's my intent with the series, is to give them a creative story. The cases are real, and they can sit there and sort of think about what happened. They can learn a little bit about what happens as well and how all the things are put together. And that was my intent. And that was the two events that really did it. Long-winded answer, simple question.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes complete sense. And I think that many of us parents trust those parental controls, and that's problematic in and of itself. And I mean, to tell you honestly, I don't even know what they do exactly. And how do I need to use them? So can you share more specifically about what that game was, or maybe talk about the games that you know are the problematic games, that like the well-known games that are most problematic for kids?
So it's really hard to do that. And let me explain why. Okay. First off, the parental controls that are in the game itself are extremely valuable and they've been proven to be effective. And so, for a parent, understanding what those controls are and how to activate them and how to make certain they don't get, deactivated is absolutely important. But think about the challenge for a second. The challenge when we're dealing with cybercrime is that bad actors will look at a problem orthogonally and they'll try to figure out something unique. Ergo, the sign as a good example. Nobody in the past probably thought about that situation. It wasn't reported to the game manufacturer. So
Um,
it's really hard to say that if it didn't happen in the past to somebody else, there's not a parental control over it.
mhm.
That's true. Okay. Uh, so it's very, very difficult to try to categorize the games themselves because a game that may be fantastic today, as far as its controls and everything else, may, have problems tomorrow. And, so everybody's moving around on this chart, and it's only because of the creativity and the ability of the human mind to derive a singularity that allows these bad actors to come up with something unique. And the holding up of the sign is the best example I can give of it because, this is absolutely allowed inside the game. It's sort of what people do. I'm going to put a sign and say, this is my house. I'm building a house in this game, whatever. Okay. So trying to, pocket the games is actually a problem. But the parents also, for the younger kids, it's staying close to them early on. And if not, having a list of, okay, these are games I'm okay with. These are games, everything else I'm not. We need to talk about it. And then having a sort of a method where you play the game with the kid or watch them play the game as they're learning to play the game. And you know, stay very close. Now, there's another fact that goes right along with this, and that is that all things technical and all things cyber have to be a safe space. If a kid gets themselves in trouble in a game, if a kid, you know, finds mom's credit card and uses it, in, you know, in some way, shape, or form, all things cyber are a safe place. It has to be an educational place. It's not a punishment space.
Yeah.
I'm taking the game away, you know, whatever, okay? Because you really want them to trust that they can come talk to you about this, even if they're in trouble for something else. Say they're grounded, okay? They can still come talk to you on this. And parents, you got to stay even keeled. I think my gardeners are outside.
I don't hear anything, so you're fine.
Oh, good. Okay.
So, can we try, though, to break down the different dangers that we can be aware of, maybe according to the ages of the children or the different types of games that we have, just to try to understand this problem more specifically?
Yes, absolutely. Um, First off, I would give you sort of 2 points to think about before we start going into categories. Uh, and I should probably caveat that as well. Yeah, there's a gardener right out the window.
No worries. I don't hear them, so I think we're
All right, well, that's good. So, first off, one must remember what Peter Steiner did in his cartoon in 1993, a long time ago, in The New Yorker. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog.
Mhm.
That's absolutely true. You're interacting with somebody, but you have no idea if that's really them
Yeah.
that's present. Now let's roll this forward and say what's going on and what's creating problems now. And there's two sort of concepts that I want to bring up. One's called friends online, and the other one's called online friends. Friends online are people that you know outside of being online. They're like the your inner circle, okay? Your buddies from schools type thing, okay? Well, the reality is care must still be used there because there's problems that can occur with friends online as well, and I'll talk about that in a minute when we get to the problems. There's a concept of online friends, which is the reverse, which says you're online in a game, there's other people in the tournament area with you, but you really don't know them. They're just on your team, if you would, okay? And those people can claim to be your friends. They can chat with you in chat sessions. They can talk to you in voice sessions themselves. And clearly, one has to be very careful. Ergo, the sign of my grandson that said, "What's your name and where do you live?" Okay. I mean, that was pretty brash and pretty bold. But the technique that online friends use, which are people that you don't really know, is they try to get you to give them small things that are just hardly anything.
Like
And,
what?
well, it could be as simple as, what color is your dog's hair?
Mhm.
Okay, they just want you to begin answering questions.
Mhm. Okay.
Then the questions become deeper frequently. That's just a method that they typically will use online. And at that point, you know, maybe they try to establish a relationship online. And this is a huge problem for even senior citizens. When you look at the romance scams, they're establishing a relationship online. And that may lead to let's meet up or whatever. Okay, at the end of this, you can put your own nastiness at the end of it. Okay, because that's usually where it's leading.
Yeah. Or send me money here or there.
Well, the extortion problem is huge.
Yeah.
Okay, and that sort of gets me into a comment that says the nature of cybercrime has changed over the years. There are numerous aspects to cybercrime that we actually don't think about right now. But if you look at the typologies of the various cybercrimes, you begin to realize that they all have different methods, different practices, different techniques that the bad actors use, and absolutely different techniques for us to detect them. Okay. So if you look, you got computer hacking and malware. Okay, we have sort of a general idea of what those are. There's still piracy and intellectual property theft that takes place. Maybe that's my goal in this whole extortion. My goal in this whole extortion with the kid is to try to get them to accept a little, USB stick from me and have them plug it into mom's computer. And my entire goal here is to steal intellectual property. And I'm using an extortion scheme against the kid to get him to do it, is basically it. And this goes right along with sextortion and everything else that's happening right now with regards to the kids. There's pornography and image-based abuse that deals with frequently more the teenage years themselves. And I would suggest we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg on this right now because of artificial intelligence and the ability to really do a deep fake that has both voice and appearance that's absolutely, spot on accurate. That is you, sort of thing. We're only just seeing the beginning of this sort of image-based abuse. Image-based abuse has been all over the place in high school years, kids. Sometimes it goes right along with cyberbullying. Okay, the two are sort of coupled together. The sad part is this is where friends online, your buddies who you know, are suddenly turning evil against you for some reason, because attitudes changed. Now they don't like you. Okay, sort of shot. And now you're getting bullied. Uh, you know, Maybe a picture image that, you agreed to send to a different person is now getting posted, and they're actually committing the extortion, is what they're doing. That's how bad some of these things can start to get to and why it is. One of the worst areas that we're, seeing, and we've been seeing for about the last 8 years, is the use of games and gameplay for the teenage years, specifically, by extremist organizations. Choose your poison on the right, on the left. It doesn't really matter, okay, where the extremist organization sits. But they'll use it to try to recruit like-minded people. Al-Qaeda has done this for many years, and those sorts of fringe organizations are continuing to do that on the right wing and on the left wing that we tend to see. A lot of that is in the gameplay. It's all related to the chat sessions, your other teammates that are in there with you. And now you're dealing with online friends, and they're basically trying to indoctrinate someone to their cause to join them. And so it's actually been used quite a lot, and that's a pretty bad one that's sitting out there. So there's many elements of cybercrime that go along with this, but the techniques and how they do things are all different, if you would.
So we're talking mainly about when people contact you, right? So if you're playing
Uh-huh.
a game that is maybe it's online, but there isn't this element of chatting with other people, is that safe?
You know, I don't know that isolating technology is a mechanism for safety. For the really young kids, I agree that having a local game that's not online for them to start playing with and to enjoy is good. But I'll bring up another story that's really sort of similar to what the question is that you're asking. Um, and this was a neighbor of where my daughter lives, of her specifically. And the neighbor related a story and said, "Look, I decided the cyberspace is way too scary. Um, I'm not going to let my kids have anything. No phones, no watches. We don't have any Apple TVs in the house. They're not allowed access to any computer. Only my husband and I can use computers and have cell phones. We're just going to isolate them. Okay, nothing, nothing, nothing. And at the time, the son was 11 years old. And another neighbor comes to her and says, "Hey, I didn't know your boy had a Facebook page." Shows the mom. The mom goes nuts. How the heck did this happen? Well, it happened because the boy got together with a friend who had a phone, who had access to Facebook. Friend showed him how to use it, and he built himself a Facebook page that he was keeping up at school by borrowing the friend's phone.
Yeah.
They're going to get exposed to technology no matter what.
Yeah.
And likely they're going to get exposed to tournament games and online games and multiplayer, RPG games. Um, they're going to get exposed almost no matter what. All right. So I'm not telling parents to surrender, hold your lines, teach your ethics, teach all those good things. Okay. But just be aware that peer pressure sometimes supersedes parent pressure big time is
Yeah.
sort of my statement. So it's pretty hard to isolate them when the kids are young and they're at home and that sort of thing. And you've got sort of control of the iPad at that point or the iPhone. You have the ability to sort of decide what they get and what they don't get. And again, it's all about the parental controls and the blocks. Because the other thing peers are really good with, especially in the mid grades, the what we call the tweens, when you're in that area, they're really good at their buddies explaining how to get around things. Okay. So, realizing that, and that's why I said that the technical and cyber area with the parent has to be a safe space.
Yeah. Yeah, so we cannot avoid it. We can't keep our kids in a bubble. They're going to be exposed if we want it or not, right? And we cannot also trust the parental controls because, first of all, those bad actors have a way to override these. And also, the kids themselves have a tendency to try to override the parental controls. So, what are the things that we can do as parents to keep our kids safe?
I think one of the main things, you have to rely that they're going to learn things on their own as they're growing up, just whatever. Okay. And you have to rely on the fact that they will begin to execute kind of good judgment. And that's why I think educating them on, what exactly are the ethics of playing a game online? I mean, that's a real hard topic, actually. Okay. Um, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, so that when they're confronted with something, because frankly, no matter what age they are, even if suddenly they're, 20 years old in college, they're going to get confronted with things like this. And they're going to have to reach down within themselves to their own ethics and their own background to answer the question and deal with it, is the reality.
Yeah.
One of the harder areas that's really stark is if a deep fake occurs where maybe it's a picture of them naked and it's somebody's threatening to post it and they're looking at it going, I don't remember ever doing this, but gosh, that really does look like me, and maybe the voice has been altered so that it really is them sort of thing. This is the AI threat. Their ethics have to be to seek help. I'm sorry, for the 18, 19, 20-year old. No, you can't fix this yourself. Okay, you have to seek help in that sort of situation. So some of them are so stark out there in the nature of the attack, you got to get help. And that's why that safe space I always said was important. Even a 20-year-old calling mom and saying this and mom calling the police. I mean, that's what it's got to come to in that situation that I just described. Okay. And deepfakes are very dangerous. I mean, we see sadly suicides caused by deepfakes.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's other areas as well where they just have to exercise judgment. All right. And it really is that learning and that close, tight learning from their younger years that's going to influence their values so they can exercise judgment. By the way, I'm not a psychologist. I have nothing to do with parental psychology. I'm just an old guy who understands cybersecurity and has seen way too much of this.
Yeah, I think one of the issues today is that parents very easily just give the devices to the children and they feel
Yeah,
like that is the kids, teenagers arena, and they don't have anything to do with it because it's too overwhelming for them. It's too much for them. The technology is too complicated
right.
for them. They just don't get it. But the thing is that because of all the dangers, we need to keep that we need to keep the relationship around the technology very, very tight and open. And as you say, have it as a safe space where we always share information with each other and
Right.
always talk about what's happening online and be involved in what our kids are doing online. And that's probably the best way to avoid these things because no matter how much we want to protect them, we can't. And the only way is just to teach them the skills to protect themselves in a way.
Yeah. And, there is a few tricks, I think, and, I don't know, the real psychologists will probably argue with me, but there's a few tricks to use. One is in the kid's mind, largely they think they understand the technology way better than the parent. Okay. You're just an old guy and you don't get it, sort of thing. And that may or may not be true, you know. Um, from a personal standpoint with my son, and I hope he doesn't watch this podcast because I'm about to say something. You know, he's 40 years old now. So anyway, my point is that I used the technique of frequently calling him in and asking, "Hey, I don't quite understand how this works. Can you show me? Can you show me? Can you show me? Can you teach me?" And then maybe I would sneak a piece of something in that says, "So if somebody abuses this, what would you do?"
Mhm.
You know, and because I found if they felt like they were superior to you at that moment, it really just kind of opened them up.
Yeah.
That was just me. Okay. Yeah, and it was just something that I would do at the time. And at the time he was growing up, video games were still a very big thing. He's actually working in the video gaming industry as it stands right now. But things have changed so dramatically is one of the issues. So,
So you think the video games are not a huge thing right now?
oh no, they are.
They are. Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely they are. Big time, very big time. And mostly the multiplayer, role-playing games, the tournament arenas, the tournament games. I mean, heck, there's professional leagues now
Yeah.
with people playing games that involve big money. So no, they're huge. It's a huge industry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just in general a good method to come from a place with our children, not from a place of lecturing them, but from a place of asking questions.
Yeah.
And and then they'll be open to answer and have have a conversation.
Yeah. And your point earlier that technology is frequently used like a pacifier is absolutely true. Okay. You watch families come into a restaurant, the mom passes out the iPads and the teenager's just expected to play with her cell phone. Like a pacifier. And it really makes you wonder
Yeah.
as to how prepared are they,
Yeah, and it starts from
I
a
think.
very young age. I see parents with a few months old baby with a screen in their in
That's
the
right.
walking around the mall or yeah,
Learning to push the buttons.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's a whole
Absolutely
other
correct.
issue that I feel, it's separate from what we're talking about, which is
Correct.
just the ability just to teach our children the ability to differentiate between real world and the online world. And
Uh-huh.
when we are in the real world, we have to deal with different emotions that rise up, with different frustrations, with fear, with overwhelm, and not just hide or it's go straight to the screen in order to pacify ourselves from these strong
Correct.
emotions.
Yeah, and your point about the emotions exist in the online world as well. They just not be maybe they may not be easily recognizable, is the point. So if someone's trying to act maliciously on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog.
Yeah.
It's really hard to tell, you know. Are they being a good friend or are they being something else?
Yeah.
No. And the other side of it is if someone's account is taken over in one of the games or in a chat room, and this affects the teens quite heavily when they're chatting with their friends on, various chat tools, is that if one of their friends' accounts was taken over and somebody else is masquerading as that friend, that's also extremely hard to tell in there as well.
Yeah.
And one of the objectives a lot of the bad actors have is just to collect information, more data, more data, more data, the color of your dog's hair, the type dog you have, blah, 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 blah. And then putting all that data together to profile someone. That's quite a challenge. Now they can use that data through other channels potentially to do things.
So basically, I feel like we need to raise wiser children. Just children and people in general who can differentiate between what is real and what is not real.
True.
That's very hard to do. I mean, I know, 70-year-old people who can differentiate that,
Oh,
who
yeah. No, that's true.
fall into traps like that very, very easily. And I think that the only way that we can raise wise children is by having them engage in the real world as much
Correct.
as possible and encounter real interactions with real people so that they can get that sense of what it means to detect like a suspicious behavior
Yep.
somebody of what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And I think that you cannot really grow that skill, that interpersonal skill, just by being online or by being online most of the time.
Correct. Yeah, I think you're right. It's very difficult, and I think it's incumbent upon the parents also. When I talked about ethics earlier, where I was using the term ethics was to mean they know where to draw the line in the sand between good and bad.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually a real difficult thing for a lot of kids
Yeah.
to deal with. A lot of adults don't draw the line, and understand good, bad, sort of thing. Or they'll come up with interesting justifications as to why something bad might actually be good.
Right.
Uh, and so it's very difficult. And unfortunately, all parents are different, and the kids are going to largely reflect the parents' values in some of these areas. So if the parents have trouble doing that, likely the kids will have trouble doing that in the long run, is
Yeah.
just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually talk a lot about that in my podcast. I talk about how much it's important for us as parents to know what our values are and to pass that along to our children.
Yep.
Because there is this sense in our society that everything goes, that everything is okay.
Right.
You can be who you are, you can express yourself however you want to, you can wear whatever you want, you can decide what your gender is, whatever it is, everything goes and everything is fine.
Yep.
And if that's your value system, then that's okay. But it has to be something that you are aware of. What are the good and what are the bad things in that, and pass that along to your children. Otherwise, if you don't do that, they're just gonna absorb everything that they get from mostly the online world and through different influencers, and they will be very confused about who they are and what their values are.
Right.
And I
Yeah,
think
'cause at the end of
those
the day, you're making a judgment based on your values. They're going
exactly.
to have problems making judgments. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and those are exactly the children who will be seduced into going to those radical movements, whether they're left
Yep.
or right. And those are the children who eventually will be separated from their families if if it goes to into an extreme.
Hmm. I would agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think like two key points here, or maybe three key points here is to have an open, strong, good relationship with our children so we can have that open communication and have that space, safe space for them to come to us with any issue that they have, whether it's online or not online. And then also having a very strong value system in the house and passing it along to our children and teaching them the difference between right or wrong and teaching them how to make judgments for themselves because eventually we can't protect them and
Correct.
we need them to be able to differentiate and know who the bad actors are and who the good ones are, um, so they can navigate this this really scary world, this really scary online world that is going to places that we really don't know and we cannot even imagine.
Well, one thing I would say, and it's sort of a sad commentary, but it's unfortunately true. The physical world. I'm an old guy. My mom, when I was growing up, if she wanted to go to the store, she would drop me off at the playground by myself and say, "Okay, I'm going to the store. Stay here, have fun, whatever. When the street lights come on, you come home," was the rule. Okay. We would never do that. That's the physical world. You got to be kidding me. Do that now? New York Central Park, you're going to drop some kid off? No. No way. Isn't going to happen. That's scary. That's the scary world. Guess what? The cyber world is worse.
Much worse.
When you pass them that iPad and drop them off at the playground, they're in the cyber world now.
Yeah.
And it can be way worse. There are no geopolitical borders really in the cyber world. It's all over the place. Okay. My son used to love the fact that he was playing video games with people from Japan. Okay. Are they really from Japan? Do you really know that? We would have those conversations. Okay. But the reality is there's no borders. It's a big playground, and there's all kinds of people in that playground,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Nobody's watching also. Nobody
That's correct.
what's happening in the conversation between the child and
Right.
the other person. Nobody knows. It's only between the child and the other person. And in the playground, if somebody
Might hear it.
to a young child, right?
Yeah.
There's gonna be somebody around to notice that
Yep.
and maybe say something about that. Or maybe
Correct.
look after, maybe it's a neighbor who knows your child and is gonna look after him. And
Right.
we don't have that sense of security in the
Not
online.
at all. That's why I said the cyber world is way more frightening than dropping your kid off at a playground by himself. Way more frightening
Yeah.
there. And I don't think there's a recognition of that as to how bad it can actually be. There's a general belief, well, if something bad happens, I'm just going to call the police. Really? You're just going to call the police. They're going to do something. I don't know. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, with
what?
the amount of cases that happen, I don't believe that they can do much.
No, it's not just the amount of cases, it's just the sheer capability,
Yeah.
largely to become involved. It's the sheer number of cases, yes, that they have to deal with, that they have to prioritize things. So yeah, it can be really problematic in there. So
Okay.
I would say that the police are driving the little Volkswagen Beetles nowadays, but the bad guys are still driving Ferraris.
Okay. So if we want to maybe summarize and break down some kind of like step-by-step guide to what parents can do in order to keep their kids safe online, what would that be?
I think there's a few things. Now, in the book, in the back of the book, there's a list of a couple of things that are sort of general prevention tips that are coming out of the story. And the first thing I say is keep your personal information private. Well, from the parent side of the house, you kind of need to be able to define what personal information is. Kids might realize, oh, it's my name and my address. Okay, but there's other things too that are in there too. And I like to describe that as if you're playing a game in a chat room in a game, it's any question that you have to answer that doesn't have to do with the game. So it's really broad.
Yeah.
It could be the color of your hair, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would
It
you say
doesn't
that they
matter.
should use a different name than their own?
Well, they're using an avatar usually, and they're using a screen name. And in the instructions of most of the games that are played by the little kids and the big kids, it tells you not to use your real name and your real information.
Okay.
So you're obfuscating that, okay? Uh, unless you tell somebody who you are in the game,
Okay.
basically. And if the parental controls are set properly, user account information, location information, all of those sorts of things are going to be excluded if they're set properly. But again, that doesn't stop the kid from answering a question.
Yeah.
So that's what one has to work on. And really, you can say, hey, keep your personal information private. Well, what is personal information? We better talk about that first, okay, and have that conversation, okay? Um, I would say to the parents, when a young child is initially playing the game, play it with them. Do your little research on how to set the parental controls. Uh, the game manufacturers and, frankly, websites, parenting websites, etc., describe these controls and how to set them and what you should do. Okay, uh, and do it. Okay, because unfortunately, as I said, the cyber world is much bigger than the physical world. Just because somebody has seen a bad action and set up a parental control doesn't mean those bad actions have stopped.
Yeah.
All the historical bad things, the easy stuff or whatever, still takes place, unfortunately. Okay. The next thing is, remember that children will learn very quickly on their own, and many times they'll learn a lot from friends, more from the parents. So having to strategize as a parent as to how you begin to deal with that is really important. What you want them to learn is to be careful what they post and how they post things on the games and where to draw that sort of ethical line. So you have to be a little bit creative in the learning side of things here as well. And you got to be a little careful of their own real world friends and what those real world friends might explain to them.
Mhm.
So you're going to be monitoring that. Speak to them regarding chat and voice chat sessions. There's some new AIs out there that are absolutely amazing that actually have voice inflection. If something happens and it goes, wow, that's really cool. Just as I inflected my voice, the AI engine will do that now too.
Yeah.
The AI engines can mimic voices. So knowing that if they're in a voice chat session and they're saying certain things, they could actually be training an AI engine to speak as them, which you can see how could potentially be used many different ways. We haven't seen the beginning of these deep fakes yet, but it's having to speak to them with regards to those types of things. Uh, Clearly for teens, a little discussion on the more advanced thing, which I like to talk about as tradecraft and cyber tradecraft, is sort of how people get information about you. And if they put all the information together, they might be able to use it. And that is that they ask very simple questions that you really don't feel bad about answering in the beginning. And then the questions get a little tougher. And then they get a little more personal.
Mhm.
And having that sort of explanation, that is a very common trickery that's been used that dates back to the Cold War. Okay. And I think having that conversation with the teens is also really important. You're not going to have, as a parent, the brain is going through transitions. There's a lot of hormonal activity going on in the kid. The brain's multiplying in size and capability. And that sort of maturity level You're going to have some problems as a parent getting through to that teen, but you just have to work ways to do it and work ways to get that ethics so that they can answer the questions correctly themselves. And maybe we all pray that if they get involved in something, that the suspicion flag goes up and says, huh, that's weird.
Yeah,
You know, it's great when that happens. Absolutely great. You know, I think for the digital detective, the reviews of the books, if you read some of the reviews, there's one of them that I say is an absolute win, where the little 12-year-old is having now conversations with the parents about cyber safety.
that's awesome.
I won one.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got one. Okay. And that was really my objective. Big time, talk about it sort of thing.
yeah. Having that open conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really hard to do. Really hard to do. So that would be the list that I would come up with in summary.
Okay, that's great. And I think also get the book, The Digital Detective, read it yourself as a parent, and then have your child read it and have the conversation about the book. That way you have something in common that you can talk about.
Correct.
Not
Now
like,
yeah, I was
yeah,
going to say this book, the first book is introducing the characters and just sort of lays the basis of the foundation. The next book that should be coming out in the Christmas time frame, I've decided to take on the massive topics of sextortion and human trafficking. So I'm going to try to really expose the young ones into how bad can it get.
that's so important. I think one of
Yeah.
the things that are really important in this book, and I just started reading it, is that you say very clearly that there are bad guys. And I think that's not, you can't take that for granted in our society because we have this tendency nowadays to see everybody as good.
Uh-huh.
And we need to teach our children that no, there are bad people and we need to be aware of these bad
That's
people
right.
and talk about those hard topics with them,
Yep.
not avoid, not try to keep them um, safe from that because it doesn't keep them safe. It just keeps them naive. And a naive person is a person that you can hurt. A
That's
person
correct.
who knows the dangers is a person who is less likely to be hurt from these
That's
things.
correct. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. That would be a win.
Exactly. So have the hard conversations. Tell them about those bad people. Tell them about the bad stuff that can happen. Don't try to shield them from that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah, so I'm adding to your list three more things. And we talked about them in this interview. We talked about having that open relationship, open and safe
Yep.
relationship. We talked about having a very strong value basis at home and teaching that to our children. And the third one is to expose our children to the hard things in the world and tell them about the bad people and don't try to keep them naive because that's what's going to hurt them.
Absolutely correct. Yes, those are three wonderful things to add to the list. Absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Tom. I think this
You're welcome.
was a very important conversation. I hope many people get this book and read it with their children. And I'm looking forward for the next one. Keep us posted about that, and I'll be happy to share that one as well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This has been a little fun discussion.
Thank you. Have a great day, Tom.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.